My name is Joanna. I'm 32 years old, and I spent 7 years saving $37,000 for my dream business. Growing up, I always lived in my younger brother Aaron's shadow, but I never imagined my parents would cross this line. Last month, they invited me to dinner only to ambush me with an outrageous demand, give my entire savings to my irresponsible brother for his latest scheme. Before I tell you what happened, where are you watching from today? If my story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support the channel. I grew up in a middle-class suburban home in Michigan, with what looked like the perfect American family from the outside. My mother worked in healthcare administration at the local hospital, managing schedules and paperwork with the same meticulous attention she gave to my brother's needs. My father was an engineer at an automotive company, logical and stern, with a soft spot that seemed reserved exclusively for his son. Aaron came into the world 4 years after me, and from that moment, the family dynamic shifted. I was old enough to notice how my parents' faces would light up when they entered his room, how their voices softened when they spoke to him. At first, the signs of favoritism seemed innocent enough. Extra dessert for Aaron, more enthusiastic praise for his finger paintings than they had shown for mine. I convinced myself this was normal, that perhaps all younger siblings received this special treatment. What I couldn't ignore was how my natural abilities seemed to fade into the background of our family narrative. I was consistently on the honor roll, won regional art competitions, and was even selected as editor of the school newspaper, achievements that were acknowledged with a perfunctory, "That's nice, Joanna," before conversations quickly shifted to Aaron's latest soccer game or science project. His C-plus grades were celebrated with ice cream outings. My academic excellence was expected. Aaron just needs more encouragement, my mother would explain when I dared to question the imbalance. You're naturally gifted, sweetheart. You don't need the extra attention. This pattern of sacrifice became the blueprint for my childhood. When Aaron turned 12, he complained that his bedroom was too small for his growing collection of sports equipment and gaming consoles. The solution: I would give up my slightly larger bedroom, the one with the window seat I loved to read in, watching the seasons change through the oak branches outside. "You're so mature for your age, Joanna," my father said as I moved my belongings into the smaller room. Aaron really appreciates this. But the thank you never came from my brother, who immediately spread his possessions across my former space, claiming it as if it had always been rightfully his. When I was 16, I landed a lead role in the school play after months of rehearsals. The performance fell on the same evening as Aaron's junior league baseball game. He was a backup player who rarely left the bench. Without hesitation, my parents chose his game, leaving me to scan the audience, before my big scene finding only empty seats where my family should have been. "We'll catch the next one," my mother promised, not realizing it was a one-weekend production, the culmination of a semester's work. There never was a next one. Meanwhile, I never missed Aaron's events. Attendance was mandatory for the entire family, my presence required to cheer from the sidelines for games, science fairs, and music recitals where he showed moderate talent at best. That same year, I started working part-time at a local boutique, earning minimum wage after school and on weekends. The owner, Mrs. Larson, recognized my eye for fashion and customer service skills, giving me increasing responsibility. While I worked for my spending money, Aaron received regular allowances for minimal chores, often forgotten or performed half-heartedly. "Your brother isn't ready for a job yet," my mother would say even as he entered high school. "He needs to focus on his studies and sports." This despite his mediocre grades and the fact he spent hours playing video games each day. These experiences taught me two contradictory lessons. I was simultaneously not important enough to prioritize, yet somehow strong enough to withstand neglect. I learned to be self-sufficient out of necessity, finding validation in the praise of teachers, employers, and friends when it wasn't forthcoming at home. Yet deep inside, a small voice always whispered that if I just achieved more, perhaps then I would finally earn the love so freely given to Aaron. College became my escape route. I applied to universities across the country, ultimately accepting an offer from a state school that provided a partial scholarship. When the financial aid package fell short, my parents seemed genuinely perplexed about how to help. "We've been setting aside money for college funds," my father explained awkwardly. But Aaron's university will be more expensive since he's looking at Ivy League options. The unspoken message was clear. Their resources were allocated for their son's future, not mine. I took out student loans, found a campus job working at the university bookstore, and limited contact with my family to monthly phone calls and obligatory holiday visits. The distance helped me see our family dynamic with clearer eyes. I majored in business with a minor in design, finding freedom in creating my own path. During my junior year, I met Jackson, my first serious boyfriend. Coming from a warm, supportive family, he was shocked by the stories I shared about my childhood. "That's not normal, Joe," he said after meeting my parents at a painfully awkward dinner where they spent most of the evening discussing Aaron's recent summer internship. "You know that, right?" His outside perspective validated what I had always felt, but couldn't fully articulate. For the first time, I began to recognize the dysfunction in my family, not as something I had imagined or exaggerated, but as a real pattern that had shaped my self-worth. Though Jackson and I eventually parted ways amicably after graduation, when career opportunities took us to different cities, his insight stayed with me, strengthening my resolve to build a life defined by my own values, rather than my family's limited view of me. After college, I stepped into the real world, with a business degree in hand and determination in my heart. Like many graduates, I started at the bottom, securing an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Chicago. The salary was modest, the cubicle was small, but it was mine, a foothold in the professional world that no one had handed to me. 6 months into the job, our firm was hired to promote a local fashion exhibition showcasing sustainable designers. As the junior team member, I was assigned to coordinate with the exhibitors, a task that unexpectedly changed the trajectory of my career. I found myself mesmerized by the innovative approaches these designers took, transforming reclaimed materials into beautiful functional pieces. One designer in particular, Naomi Winters, created jackets from upcycled denim that were structured like high-fashion outerwear, but maintained the rugged authenticity of their origins. Something clicked inside me as I ran my fingers over the carefully constructed seams. This was what I wanted to create: fashion with purpose, beauty with ethics. "You have a good eye," Naomi remarked, noticing how I analyzed the construction. "Do you so?" I admitted that I'd learned basics from my grandmother and had modified my own clothes throughout college when I couldn't afford new ones. What started as a practical skill born of necessity had become a creative outlet, though I'd never considered it professionally. "You should take classes," she encouraged. "This industry needs people who understand both business and design." Her words ignited something in me. Within weeks, I had enrolled in evening pattern making and construction courses at a local design school. I would work my marketing job from 9 to 5, grab a quick dinner, and then immerse myself in the world of textiles and techniques until late into the night. Weekends were spent practicing, creating, and refining my skills. It was during one of these weekend workshops that I met Sarah Daniels, a former buyer for a major department store, who had transitioned to teaching and consulting. She took an interest in my dual background in business and emerging design skills. "You've got something special, Joanna," she told me after reviewing my portfolio of sketches and sample pieces. "You understand both the creative and commercial sides. That's rare and valuable." Sarah became more than an instructor. She became a mentor who saw potential in me that my family never had. Under her guidance, I began developing a concrete business plan for what had started as a vague dream: my own sustainable fashion line that would combine ethical production with accessible price points. As my vision crystallized, so did my determination to make it reality. I calculated that I would need approximately $40,000 to launch properly, enough for initial inventory, a basic website, marketing materials, production equipment, and a small cushion for unexpected expenses. It was a daunting number, especially on my modest salary, but I developed a disciplined saving strategy. I moved from my one-bedroom apartment to a shared living situation, with 2 roommates cutting my rent by more than half. My morning coffee shop ritual became a travel mug of home-brewed coffee. I sold my car and navigated Chicago's public transportation system, even during the biting winter months. Lunches were meal prepped on Sundays, shopping was limited to necessities and new clothes, ironically for an aspiring fashion designer, were off the table unless they came from thrift stores where I could also study construction techniques. Every dollar saved was meticulously tracked in a spreadsheet. I opened a separate high-yield savings account that I nicknamed Future Fashions in the online banking portal, a small act of manifestation that made me smile whenever I transferred funds. I set up automatic deposits to go in on payday before I could be tempted to spend the money elsewhere. To accelerate my savings, I took on weekend side hustles, everything from alterations for colleagues to helping local boutiques with their social media management. Any extra income went straight into my business fund, untouched and growing steadily. The first milestone, $10,000, took nearly 2 years to reach. I celebrated alone in my bedroom with a single cupcake and a renewed determination. 20,000 followed 15 months later, the result of a promotion at work and increasingly lucrative freelance projects. By the 5-year mark, I had just over $30,000, and my skills had developed to the point where Sarah believed I was ready to launch. You don't need to wait for the full 40s, she advised. 37 would give you enough to start small but strong. Better to get your designs out there than to wait for perfect conditions that might never come. I took her advice to heart and set a new target, $37,000, with a launch date in 3 months. Those final $7,000 represented countless extra projects selling furniture I didn't absolutely need and declining social invitations that would cost money. But watching that number grow, knowing each dollar brought me closer to independence, made every sacrifice worthwhile. As my savings approached the target, my business plan evolved from theoretical to practical. I had secured relationships with 3 ethical fabric suppliers, negotiated rates with a small local production facility, and built a network of potential retailers interested in carrying my first collection. My website was designed and ready to launch pending only product photos. I had even created a marketing calendar identifying key dates for collection releases and promotional activities. My line would focus initially on versatile women's pieces, items that could transition from work to weekend, designed to layer and adapt across seasons. Each garment would be made from sustainable or upcycled materials, with transparency about sourcing and production built into the brand identity. I called it Threaded Values, a name that reflected both the physical construction and the ethical foundation of my vision. As the launch date approached, I felt a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. After years of working for others, I was on the verge of creating something entirely my own. The $37,000 in my account represented not just money, but years of sacrifice, determination, and faith in myself when no one else seemed to have it. It was the financial embodiment of a dream that had sustained me through lonely holidays, shared apartments with strangers, and endless nights of work followed by classes. 3 months from launch, I had reached $37,000 exactly. That evening, I sat on my small balcony with a glass of inexpensive wine, watching the Chicago sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded me of my upcoming spring collection. For the first time in my life, I felt completely aligned with my purpose, standing firmly on a foundation I had built for myself brick by careful brick. I had no idea that within weeks, my family would test whether that foundation was truly mine to stand on. While I was building my business dream brick by brick, my brother Aaron was charting a very different course. His journey from our childhood home to adulthood was paved not with personal sacrifice, but with my parents' unwavering financial and emotional support. Aaron enrolled at Northwestern University, an excellent school with a price tag to match. My parents proudly covered his tuition, housing, meal plans, and even provided a generous monthly allowance for networking opportunities, which, based on his social media posts, largely consisted of fraternity parties and weekend trips to Michigan with friends. His academic path resembled a pinball machine bouncing erratically between majors as his interests shifted. He started in pre-med because my father thought it had prestige, switched to business. When he found the science courses too demanding, pivoted to communications. When business math proved challenging, and finally settled on liberal studies, a broad degree that accommodated his scattered interests without requiring deep expertise in any single discipline. Aaron is finding himself, my mother would explain during our infrequent phone calls. He's exploring his options. That's what college is for. This justification never acknowledged that such extended finding was a luxury afforded by their financial cushion, one not extended to me during my more focused educational journey. After 5.5 years, Aaron graduated with a degree that had no clear professional trajectory. No matter, my parents funded his apartment in Chicago's trendy River North neighborhood, while he established himself professionally. This establishment process involved a series of false starts, each embraced with initial enthusiasm, that quickly faded when the reality of consistent effort became apparent. First came his podcast about urban lifestyle trends, abandoned after 8 episodes, when the technical aspects of production proved too limiting for his creative vision. Next was a dropshipping business selling imported leather goods, which dissolved when customers complained about quality, and Aaron found customer service too tedious. A brief stint in real estate followed ending when he discovered that showing properties required working weekends and accommodating clients' schedules. Throughout these ventures, Aaron maintained the lifestyle to which he'd become accustomed: designer clothes, concert tickets, weekend trips, and dinners at restaurants where the appetizers cost more than my entire food budget for the week. My parents subsidized this existence under the guise of investing in his future, seemingly untroubled by the lack of return on their investment. I maintained a diplomatic distance from Aaron's choices, limiting my exposure to holiday gatherings and occasional group texts. When asked about his latest projects, I offered generic encouragement while changing the subject. It wasn't my place to question how my parents spent their money, and I'd long ago accepted that our lives operated under different rules. This uneasy peace was shattered last fall when Aaron discovered cryptocurrency. What began as casual interest quickly became an obsession. His social media transformed overnight into a stream of crypto jargon and market predictions. He spoke with sudden authority about blockchain technology and investment strategies, positioning himself as an insider despite his novice status. At Thanksgiving dinner, Aaron dominated the conversation, with tales of friends who had made fortunes overnight. This guy from my fraternity put in $10,000 last year, and now he's bought a vacation house in Florida. He announced, eyes bright with the fever of potential wealth. The key is getting in on the right coins early. My father, always impressed by Aaron's enthusiasm, asked detailed questions about risk factors and returns. I remained silent, focusing on my mashed potatoes, while Aaron explained that conventional financial wisdom doesn't apply to crypto. A red flag if I'd ever heard one. By Christmas, Aaron had convinced my parents to diversify their retirement portfolio by investing in his recommended cryptocurrencies. My stomach tightened when my mother casually mentioned they had moved $30,000 from their 401k into various digital currencies on Aaron's advice. Are you sure that's wise? I asked carefully. Retirement funds are typically better in more stable investments. Your brother has done extensive research, my father replied dismissively. The traditional market can't match these returns. We're only putting in what we can afford to lose. What they considered affordable to lose struck me as alarmingly substantial, but I retreated from the conversation. Years of family dynamics had taught me that questioning Aaron's judgment was an exercise in futility that only positioned me as the negative, jealous sister. The cryptocurrency market's notorious volatility proved disastrous for my family's finances. Over the next 3 months, a series of regulatory announcements and high-profile exchange collapses sent prices plummeting. Aaron had convinced my parents to keep investing during the initial dips, buying the dip, as he called it, which only magnified their losses when the market continued its downward spiral. By March, my parents had lost over 70% of their cryptocurrency investment, approximately $90,000 of their retirement savings. Worse still, they had recently put a non-refundable deposit on a retirement home in Florida, counting on their investment portfolio to cover the remaining payments. The financial catastrophe coincided with my mother developing chronic back problems that required specialized physical therapy not fully covered by insurance. My father's company simultaneously announced a restructuring that put his position at risk, creating a perfect storm of financial insecurity. Throughout this crisis, Aaron remained conspicuously absent from family calls, offering vague assurances via text that the market would rebound. Meanwhile, his Instagram showed him at a music festival in California and dining at exclusive restaurants, apparently untouched by the financial devastation he had helped orchestrate. My parents never directly blamed Aaron for their financial predicament. Instead, they spoke of market forces and unforeseen circumstances, protecting their son from accountability while scrambling to rearrange their financial future. They cashed out what remained of their crypto holdings at a significant loss and began exploring options to access their remaining retirement funds without triggering excessive penalties. I learned most of these details in fragments through concerned phone calls from my Aunt Lisa, who had always seen through the golden child facade and worried about my parents' financial decision-making where Aaron was concerned. I offered to help with research on financial assistance programs for my mother's medical needs, but otherwise kept my distance from the situation, recognizing the complicated dynamics at play. Little did I know that their financial solution would soon involve the $37,000 I had spent years accumulating for my business, money that represented not just my financial security, but my chance at professional independence and creative fulfillment. As I would soon discover in my family's economy of need, my brother's rescue would once again take priority over my dreams. The invitation came on a Tuesday afternoon, a text from my mother asking if I could join them for dinner on Friday. "We haven't seen you in ages, sweetheart. Dad is grilling your favorite salmon." The message was unusually warm, lacking the subtle guilt trips that typically accompanied family invitations. Against my better judgment, a small part of me felt pleased by the personal touch, the acknowledgement of my favorite food, the apparent desire for my company. I hesitated before responding. My business launch was now just 10 weeks away, and every evening was precious time for finalizing designs and coordinating with suppliers. Still, it had been months since I'd seen my parents, and a nagging sense of daughterly obligation tugged at me. "Sure I can make it? Should I bring anything?" I replied. "Just yourself, dear. We can't wait to see you and catch up on all your news." That last part should have been my first warning sign. In our family, catching up on my news rarely featured prominently in gatherings. But I dismissed my unease, telling myself that perhaps my parents were finally taking an interest in my life. Friday evening arrived with unexpected nostalgia as I drove through my childhood neighborhood. Spring had brought the magnolia trees into bloom, their sweet scent drifting through my partially open car window. The familiar route past the community park where I'd spent solitary afternoons sketching while Aaron's baseball games commanded our parents' attention. The high school where I'd edited the newspaper largely unnoticed by my family. These landmarks carried both comfort and old wounds. My parents' house looked smaller somehow, though nothing had changed about the brick two-story with its meticulously maintained lawn and seasonal wreath on the front door. I smoothed my dress, a prototype from my upcoming collection that I'd been quietly proud of, and approached the front door with a bottle of moderately priced wine in hand, despite my mother's instruction to bring nothing. "Joanna." My mother opened the door before I could ring the bell, enveloping me in a hug that felt unusually enthusiastic. Her perfume, the same she'd worn throughout my childhood, brought an involuntary lump to my throat. "Look at you, so sophisticated. Is that one of your designs?" "It's lovely, dear." The compliment, so unexpected and specific, momentarily disarmed me. My father appeared behind her, offering his standard brief hug before commenting on how well I looked. The warmth of their reception felt both welcome and disorienting, like putting on a sweater that had shrunk in the wash. Recognizable, but not quite fitting right. Their home smelled of grilling salmon and fresh bread, comforting scents that momentarily transported me to happier family memories. I noted with curiosity that Aaron's car wasn't in the driveway. "Is Aaron joining us?" I asked casually as my mother poured wine in the living room. "Oh, he might stop by later," she replied with a vague wave of her hand. "He's been so busy lately. You know how it is with his new project." I didn't know actually having deliberately kept myself out of the loop on Aaron's latest ventures after the cryptocurrency disaster. But I nodded politely. What struck me as odd was that family dinners typically revolved around Aaron's schedule, not mine. For them to arrange an evening without guaranteeing his presence was unprecedented. The conversation during appetizers was surprisingly focused on me. Questions about my job, my apartment, even my friends. My parents seemed genuinely interested in my responses, making eye contact and asking follow-up questions, rather than simply waiting for their turn to speak. It was the kind of attention I had craved throughout my childhood, now arriving unexpectedly in my adult life. "And what about this business idea of yours?" my father asked as we moved to the dining table for the main course. "Your mother mentioned you've been taking some design classes." The question caught me off guard. I had mentioned my business plans only in passing during previous visits, met with polite but disinterested nods. That my father not only remembered but was initiating conversation about it seemed almost too good to be true. "It's actually more than an idea now," I said carefully, unsure how much I wanted to share. "I'm launching in about 2 months, a sustainable fashion line called Threaded Values." "That's wonderful, honey." My mother's enthusiasm seemed genuine. "You always had such a good eye for clothes, even as a little girl. Remember how you used to sketch outfits for your dolls?" I was momentarily speechless. She remembered that those sketches had been tucked into journals I thought no one had ever noticed. "It must take a lot of startup capital for something like that," my father commented, serving himself more potatoes. "Inventory and whatnot." "It does." I acknowledged, a hint of pride entering my voice. "I've been saving for 5 years, living with roommates, working side jobs on weekends, putting away every extra dollar." "How responsible," my mother said warmly. "You've always been so good with money, unlike—" She caught herself taking a sip of wine instead of finishing the sentence. "Unlike Aaron." The unspoken comparison hung in the air. "How much have you managed to save, if you don't mind my asking?" My father inquired, his tone casual, but his eyes suddenly more focused. Something in his expression made me hesitate. "Enough to launch at the scale I've planned," I answered vaguely. "It's taken discipline, but it'll be worth it." "But what's the actual number?" he pressed, setting down his fork. "Ballpark figure." The directness of the question, combined with the unusual interest in my finances, sent a warning signal through my body. This wasn't idle curiosity. There was purpose behind these questions. Before I could decide how to respond, the front door opened, and Aaron's voice called out, "Sorry I'm late." My brother appeared in the dining room doorway looking exactly as he always did. Designer jeans, casually expensive shirt, the confident posture of someone who has never doubted his welcome or worth. He gave our mother a kiss on the cheek, nodded to our father, and offered me a quick, "Hey, Joe," before taking his place at the table. Still his place, as if he'd never left home. "We're just getting to the good part of the conversation." My father said, an odd edge to his voice. "Joanna was telling us about her business launch." "Right, the clothing thing," Aaron said, helping himself to salmon without being asked. "That's actually pretty good timing. I've been wanting to talk to everyone about an amazing opportunity that's come up." The shift was immediate and familiar. Like a well-rehearsed dance, the family's attention pivoted to Aaron, my mother's expression brightening with interest, my father leaning forward slightly. I felt myself fading into the background, a sensation I knew intimately from years of family dinners. Aaron launched into what sounded like a prepared speech about a ground-floor investment opportunity in a friend's tech startup. The details were vague, but delivered with his characteristic confidence. Revolutionary app design, pre-seed funding, round guaranteed returns within 18 months, potential buyout by a major tech company. I ate my dinner in silence, watching my parents nod encouragingly at each of Aaron's grandiose claims. The familiar dynamic was almost comforting in its predictability, until Aaron reached the climax of his pitch. "So that's why I'm looking for investors who want to get in early," he concluded, looking directly at me for the first time since his arrival. "People who have capital available and understand the value of family supporting family." The room fell silent. My mother fidgeted with her napkin. My father cleared his throat, and Aaron maintained unblinking eye contact with me. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The unusual invitation, the focused interest in my life, the questions about my savings, Aaron's conveniently timed arrival for dessert. This wasn't a family dinner. It was an ambush. "Joanna," my mother said softly, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "We know you've been very successful at saving for your project, But Aaron has a real chance here for something big. The timing is critical, my father added. This opportunity won't wait. And with our current financial situation, we can't help him ourselves. What exactly are you asking? I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Aaron flashed his most charming smile, the one that had gotten him out of countless childhood transgressions. I need $37,000 for the minimum investment tier, just until the first round of returns comes in, 18 months tops. I'll pay you back with interest. The specific amount, the exact figure in my business account, made my blood run cold. They knew. Somehow they knew precisely how much I had saved. How did you know how much money I have? I asked, pulling my hand away from my mother's. My parents exchanged glances. Aunt Lisa mentioned you told her about saving up, my mother admitted. We're so proud of how financially responsible you've been, honey. And that's why you're perfect for this, Aaron interjected smoothly. You're the only one in the family who has liquid capital right now. It would just be a loan. Family helping family. What about my business? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. That money is allocated for inventory production, my website launch. Everything is scheduled, deposits have been promised to vendors. My mother's dismissive way felt like a physical blow. You can postpone that for a little while, can't you? Just save up again for your little clothing project. You're so good at saving. Aaron's opportunity is time sensitive, my father added. Your hobby can wait. Hobby. The word landed like a slap. 5 years of sacrifice, thousands of hours of learning and planning reduced to a hobby that could be casually postponed. With Mom's medical bills and the situation with the retirement home down payment, we're in a tight spot. My father continued, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he'd used throughout my childhood, when decisions had already been made. Aaron has real potential. He just needs this one chance to prove himself. The subtext was unmistakable. Aaron's potential mattered. Mine did not. I need some time to think about this, I managed to say, rising from the table on unsteady legs. The room felt too warm, the air too thick. Of course, sweetheart, my mother said, though her disappointed expression suggested she had expected immediate compliance. But Aaron needs to give his friend an answer by Monday. 3 days to decide whether to surrender my dream for my brother's latest scheme. I should go, I said, gathering my purse. Thank you for dinner. Aaron followed me to the door while our parents remained at the table. Joe, I know it seems sudden, but this is a sure thing. I've done the research. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't going to pay off big time. The same words he'd used about cryptocurrency, no doubt. I'll think about it, I repeated, not trusting myself to say more. The drive home passed in a blur, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I felt simultaneously numb and overwhelmed, my mind racing through the implications of what had just happened. My family hadn't invited me to dinner because they missed me or valued my company. They hadn't asked about my life because they cared about my achievements or happiness. The entire evening had been orchestrated for a single purpose: to access my savings, the tangible representation of years of sacrifice and determination. As I pulled into my apartment parking lot, the first tears finally came, not of sadness, but of pure clarifying anger. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake in my darkened bedroom, replaying the dinner conversation on an endless loop, analyzing every word, every implication. The sheer audacity of the request still stunned me. Not just the amount, though asking for my entire savings was breathtaking in its presumption, but the casual dismissal of my business as something inconsequential, a little clothing project that could simply be postponed indefinitely. By 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and moved to my small living room, wrapping myself in a blanket on the couch. I called Tanya, my best friend since college, knowing she worked night shifts as a nurse and would be awake. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Joe, that's insane. They're literally asking you to give up your dream for your brother's get-rich-quick scheme." "Maybe I'm overreacting," I said, though I didn't believe it. "They're family, after all. Maybe I should help if they're really in financial trouble." "Stop right there," Tanya cut in firmly. "This isn't about helping family through hard times. If they needed money for your mom's medical bills, that would be one thing. But they're asking you to fund your brother's investment opportunity after he already lost their retirement money. That's not helping family. That's enabling bad decisions. Her clarity was refreshing, cutting through the fog of guilt and obligation that had followed me home from dinner. "What would it mean for your business if you gave them the money?" she asked, though we both knew the answer. "It would kill it," I said quietly. Even if Aaron's promise to repay in 18 months was legitimate, which based on his track record is doubtful, I'd miss my launch window. My contacts with suppliers would lapse, the production facility would fill their schedule with other clients, and the retailers who've expressed interest would move on. And how long did it take you to save that money? 5 years of living with roommates, no vacations, working weekends, buying nothing I didn't absolutely need. So if Aaron doesn't pay you back, which let's be real is the likely scenario, how long would it take you to rebuild your savings? I did the mental calculation. 7 years minimum. I'm making more now than when I started saving, but costs have gone up too. 7 years of your life, Tanya emphasized. 7 more years of putting your dream on hold. For what? So your brother can invest in some vague startup that probably won't exist in 6 months. Put that way, the answer seemed obvious. Yet family obligation weighed heavily. I keep thinking about what my mom said about family helping family. When has that principle ever applied to you, Joe? When have they sacrificed anything significant for your dreams? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Because we both knew the truth, never. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began researching family loan agreements, thinking perhaps there was a middle ground, a formal, legally binding arrangement that would protect my interests if I did decide to help. The results were discouraging. Even with documentation, loans between family members were notoriously difficult to enforce both legally and emotionally. The common advice was clear: never lend money to family that you can't afford to lose entirely. I certainly couldn't afford to lose $37,000. As dawn broke, I made myself a strong cup of coffee and sat down with my journal, a practice I'd begun during therapy last year. Dr. Marshall had suggested mapping out past patterns in my family's behavior as a way to identify recurring dynamics. Now, I created a timeline of financial interactions within my family. Age 18 parents contributed $5,000 toward my college, while simultaneously setting aside $120,000 for Aaron's future education. Age 22, graduation gift was a $200 watch. Aaron received a new car when he graduated high school. Age 25, asked for a $1,500 loan to take an advanced pattern-making course. Parents said finances were tight. That same month, they funded Aaron's $12,000 podcast equipment. Age 28, mother borrowed $800 from me for temporary cash flow issue that was never repaid or mentioned again. The pattern was undeniable, a one-way flow of resources toward Aaron with minimal reciprocity. And now, at 32, I was being asked to surrender my entire business fund for his latest venture. Speaking of that venture, what did I actually know about this supposed investment opportunity? Aaron had been deliberately vague about specifics during dinner, focusing on potential returns rather than the actual business model. This lack of transparency raised red flags. I spent the morning conducting some digital detective work. Aaron's social media provided the first clue. Multiple recent check-ins at a casino resort in Wisconsin, always late at night, often with captions about feeling lucky or big money energy. His supposed tech entrepreneur friend appeared in several photos, both of them surrounded by chips at poker tables. Next, I messaged Maya, one of the few mutual acquaintances Aaron and I shared from high school, who had remained in touch with both of us. Without revealing the specifics of my situation, I casually asked if she'd heard anything about Aaron's new business venture. "Business venture," she replied with a laughing emoji. "The only venture I know about is him trying to recover his gambling losses. He was complaining last week about being down almost $40,000 at the tables. Said he needs to get even before his creditors come looking for him." The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't about an investment opportunity at all. It was about covering gambling debts. The specific amount, the urgency, the vague details. It all made sense now. My brother wasn't asking for a loan for a legitimate business. He was trying to use my savings to rescue himself from the consequences of his own reckless behavior. Again. Even more troubling was the evidence that despite claiming financial hardship, Aaron's lifestyle remained unchanged. His Instagram showed a new designer watch in a photo posted just last week. He checked into an upscale steakhouse 3 days ago with a caption about celebrating life. These were not the actions of someone experiencing genuine financial distress. By Sunday evening, after 2 days of reflection research and painful clarity, I had reached my decision. I would not be giving Aaron my savings. Not as a gift, not as a loan, not in any form. With guidance from Dr. Marshall during an emergency virtual session, I drafted a respectful but firm refusal message to send to my parents. After careful consideration, I've decided I cannot provide the funds Aaron requested. The money I've saved represents 5 years of sacrifice specifically for my business launch, which is now just weeks away. My commitment to vendors and my business plan makes it impossible for me to redirect these funds. I care deeply about our family, but I need to honor my own hard work and dreams as well. I'm happy to help Aaron in non-financial ways such as reviewing his business plan or connecting him with resources for financial counseling. Before sending it, I called Sarah, my mentor, to discuss the situation and ensure I wasn't making an emotional decision that might damage my family relationships beyond repair. "You're not just protecting your money, Joanna," she assured me after listening to the full story. "You're protecting your self-worth. Your business isn't just a financial investment. It's an investment in yourself, in the belief that your vision deserves to exist in the world. Don't let anyone diminish that even family." Her words strengthened my resolve. I sent the message to my parents and braced myself for the fallout, preparing a script for the inevitable confrontation. "I love you, but this is my final decision. I cannot discuss it further. I wish Aaron well with finding alternative funding." What I didn't anticipate was how quickly the situation would escalate, or how revealing the response would be about the true nature of my family dynamics. The family meeting was scheduled for Wednesday evening at my parents' house, ostensibly to discuss options, following my refusal. Despite my clear message that my decision was final, my mother insisted this was too important to resolve over text. Against my better judgment, I agreed to the meeting, hoping we might find a constructive path forward that respected my boundaries. I arrived to find my parents and Aaron already seated in the living room, their expressions ranging from my mother's tearful disappointment to my father's tight-lipped disapproval to Aaron's barely concealed anger. The atmosphere was thick with expectation that I would ultimately relent under the weight of their combined pressure. "Thank you for coming, Joanna," my father began formally, as if opening a business negotiation. "We wanted to discuss your response to Aaron's proposal." I took a deep breath, centering myself before speaking. "I appreciate you wanting to talk this through, but I need to be clear up front. My decision is not going to change. My savings are allocated to my business launch, which is happening in less than 2 months." The statement landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples of disbelief across their faces. They had genuinely expected me to capitulate. "Joanna," my mother began, her voice wavering, "I don't think you understand the opportunity Aaron would be missing. This could set him up for life." "I understand the situation better than you might think," I replied carefully. "I've done my research on both the investment opportunity and Aaron's current circumstances." Aaron shifted uncomfortably on the couch. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know this isn't about a tech startup investment. It's about covering gambling debts." My mother gasped softly. My father's eyes narrowed as he turned to Aaron, who had flushed red. "That's not... yes, I've had some losses, but this is still a legitimate investment," he stammered. "The money would go to both." "Even if that were true," I continued, maintaining my composure, "my answer would be the same. I've worked too hard and too long for this money. My business launch isn't a hobby or a little project that can be postponed. It's my future, my career, my dream." "You've always been selfish," Aaron suddenly erupted, the charming facade cracking completely. "Always thinking about yourself instead of this family. One lone Joanna. One time we ask you for help and you can't even do that." The accusation was so fundamentally inverted from reality that I almost laughed. Selfish, I put myself through college. I've worked multiple jobs since I was 16. I've lived with roommates in tiny apartments while saving every penny. Meanwhile, you've had every advantage, every support, every safety net possible. That's enough, my father interrupted sharply. We're not here to compare childhoods. Aren't we, though? I challenged, years of unspoken resentment finding voice. Isn't that relevant to this conversation? The fact that I've always been expected to be self-sufficient while Aaron has always been rescued from consequences. My mother's tears flowed freely now, her voice rising with emotion. How can you say such things? We've always loved you both equally. Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's demonstrated through actions, priorities, and sacrifices. I've never asked you for anything close to what you've given Aaron throughout his life. And now the one thing that's mine, money I earned and saved through years of sacrifice. You expect me to hand over because he needs a bailout. Again. My father leaned forward, his voice dropping to the stern tone that had intimidated me throughout childhood. Joanna, you need to think very carefully about what you're doing here. Family comes first. Always. I agree that family is important, I replied, but family should support each other's growth and dreams, not just enable destructive patterns. Aaron needs real help, not another bailout that teaches him there are no consequences for his choices. Aaron jumped to his feet. I already told my creditors I would have the money by Friday, he shouted, confirming exactly what I had suspected. Do you have any idea what they might do if I don't pay? That's not my responsibility, I said quietly but firmly. Your gambling debts are not my emergency. My mother grabbed my hands, her fingers cold and trembling. Joanna, please. We're your family. If you can't do this for Aaron, do it for us. We can't bear to see him in trouble. I'm sorry you're in this position, I said sincerely. But I can't set myself on fire to keep Aaron warm. Not anymore. My father's expression hardened. So that's it. You turn your back on this family when we need you most. The emotional manipulation was so transparent now that I could see it clearly for what it was. A tactic that had worked throughout my childhood, but no longer held power over me. I'm not turning my back on anyone. My savings are for my business, which launches next month. If Aaron is genuinely interested in starting a legitimate business, I'd be happy to help him develop a business plan, connect him with resources for entrepreneurs, even advise on marketing strategies. But I will not give him my money. If that's your final answer, my father said coldly, then perhaps you should reconsider what it means to be part of this family. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I realized this had never been about helping family. It had been about maintaining the established hierarchy with Aaron's needs perpetually prioritized above mine. I've spent my entire life trying to earn my place in this family, I said, rising to my feet with a calm I didn't know I possessed. I've tried to be the responsible one, the self-sufficient one, the one who never asks for help. And still, when it comes down to it, my dreams are considered disposable, while Aaron's problems are family emergencies. That's not love. That's not family. That's exploitation. I gathered my purse, feeling strangely light despite the heaviness of the moment. I love you all, but I won't participate in this dynamic anymore. My business launches next month. You're all welcome to attend the opening event. I hope you'll come and see what I've built, with or without your support. As I walked to the door, Aaron called after me, his voice suddenly conciliatory. Joe, wait. Maybe we can work something out. What if I just took part of it, 20,000, even 10? The negotiation attempt only confirmed I had made the right decision. I left without responding, closing the door gently behind me. The aftermath was predictable. My phone buzzed constantly for the next 2 days, with messages from my parents alternating between guilt trips and anger. Aaron's approach cycled between accusations of betrayal and insincere apologies designed to reopen negotiations. Relatives I rarely spoke with suddenly called to understand both sides, clearly dispatched as flying monkeys to apply additional pressure. Aaron even took to social media, posting vague statements about family members who only care about themselves and blood that turns its back on you. The public attempt to shame me into compliance might have worked in the past, but I found myself unmoved, even slightly amused by the transparency of the tactic. After a week of bombardment, I made the difficult decision to temporarily block my family's numbers and social media accounts. Not permanently. I wasn't ready for complete estrangement, but I needed space to focus on my business launch without the constant emotional drain of their manipulation attempts. As Dr. Marshall had reminded me during our emergency session, setting boundaries isn't about punishing others. It's about creating the conditions where you can thrive. For the first time in my life, I was prioritizing those conditions unapologetically. And despite the pain of family conflict, I felt more aligned with my authentic self than ever before. The morning of my business launch dawned with a clarity that belied the emotional turbulence of the previous weeks. I stood in the small rented showroom where I display my first collection, running my fingers along the garments I had designed, sourced, and in some cases partially constructed myself. Each piece represented not just creativity, but resilience, tangible proof that I had chosen my own dream over the familiar pattern of sacrifice. Launching threaded values amid family estrangement wasn't how I had imagined this day. Part of me had still held on to the childish fantasy that my success might finally earn my parents' full attention and approval. Now I understood that external validation had never been the point. This business was about honoring my vision, my values, and my worth, whether or not anyone else recognized them. The online store went live at 9 a.m. as scheduled. I watched nervously as the first visitor counts appeared on the analytics dashboard, then the first add to cart, and finally the first completed purchase, a sustainable denim jacket that had been particularly challenging to perfect. Each notification brought a surge of vindication. This wasn't a hobby or a little project. This was a viable business with real customers who valued my work. By midday, local fashion bloggers and sustainable lifestyle influencers began arriving at the showroom, examining the garments with appreciative attention to detail. A reporter from the city magazine took photos and interviewed me about my design philosophy and commitment to ethical production. When she asked about my journey to entrepreneurship, I shared the years of saving and planning without mentioning the family drama. That part of the story was mine to process privately. "Your attention to both ethics and aesthetics is impressive," she noted, photographing a blouse made from reclaimed silk. "We don't often see sustainable fashion with this level of sophistication at accessible price points." Her words echoed what Sarah had told me years ago, that understanding both business and design was my unique strength. The validation felt particularly meaningful, now confirming that my vision had value in the wider world regardless of my family's inability to see it. The first week exceeded all projections. Sales came not just from friends and local supporters, but from customers across the country who had found the website through targeted marketing and press coverage. The sustainable fashion community, though niche, was engaged and enthusiastic, sharing my products on social media and generating organic word-of-mouth promotion. As the initial success stabilized into a sustainable pattern, I focused on building relationships beyond my biological family. I deepened friendships with those who had supported my decision to stand firm. Tanya, who had talked me through that sleepless night, Dr. Marshall, who had helped me recognize manipulative patterns, Sarah, who had mentored me professionally and personally through the launch. The entrepreneur group I joined provided both practical business advice and emotional camaraderie. Weekly meetings with fellow small business owners created a space where determination was celebrated rather than exploited, where ambition was respected rather than dismissed. For the first time, I found myself surrounded by people who instinctively understood the value of dreams and the courage required to pursue them. My personal life evolved as well. 3 months after the launch, I met Daniel at a sustainable business conference. As an environmental lawyer who had left a lucrative corporate position to work with eco-conscious startups, he understood the courage required to prioritize values over convenience. Our relationship developed slowly but steadily, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's work. When I eventually shared the story of my family estrangement, his response was supportive without being judgmental. Exactly what I needed. "Family relationships are complex," he said, "but there's a difference between loyalty and self-erasure. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you a bad daughter or sister." His perspective, coming from someone with a healthy but realistic view of family obligations, helped ease the lingering guilt I still carried. Meanwhile, my family's attempts at reconciliation came in predictable waves. My mother's birthday arrived with an invitation that carried clear expectations. "It would mean so much if you could join us. Aaron has news he's excited to share with everyone." The subtext was clear. My presence was welcome as an audience for my brother, not as a person with news or achievements of my own. I sent a thoughtful card and a modest gift instead, maintaining the boundary I had established without closing the door entirely. My father reached out when a small feature about threaded values appeared in a business publication. "Saw your little shop got some press," he texted. "Good for you." The diminutive framing, "little shop," revealed he still didn't fully grasp the scope of what I had built. But the acknowledgement was progress, however slight. Aaron's approach to reconciliation was most transparent. 6 months after our confrontation, he called out of the blue opening with small talk before casually mentioning, "So things have been going pretty well with that business of yours, huh? I've been thinking about getting into sustainable products myself. Maybe we could grab coffee and talk strategy sometime." The request for free consultation rather than genuine interest in rebuilding our relationship spoke volumes. I suggested he check out some specific business resources online and left it at that. Through it all, threaded values continued to grow. The first production run sold out, completely validating both the business model and design aesthetic. Within 6 months, I was able to hire a part-time assistant to manage order fulfillment while I focused on designing the next seasonal collection. Profits were modest but steady, with clear trajectories for sustainable growth. Looking back, I could now see that standing firm against my family's demands was not just about protecting my savings or even my business. It was about finally recognizing my own worth after a lifetime of having it questioned. It was about understanding that dreams aren't luxuries to be sacrificed at the first sign of someone else's need, especially when that need stems from choices I had no part in making. The $37,000 I had protected represented more than capital for inventory and marketing. It represented a declaration that my future mattered, that my vision deserved space in the world, that my years of discipline and planning had value. By refusing to surrender it, I had finally broken the pattern of being the family member who always sacrificed, always accommodated, always came last. 1 year after launch, as I prepared for my first major trade show, I received an unexpected email from my mother. Unlike previous communications, this one contained no guilt trips or implicit demands. Instead, there was a simple acknowledgement. "Your father and I watched the segment about your company on the local news last night. Your passion for what you do really shows. We may not have always understood your choices, but we can see now that you've built something meaningful. When you're ready, we'd like to have a real conversation." It wasn't an apology, but it was recognition, something I had sought my entire life. I responded cautiously, suggesting coffee at a neutral location rather than another emotionally loaded family dinner. Whether this represented genuine growth or simply a new strategy remained to be seen, but I was now approaching family relationships from a position of strength rather than need. The business that my family had dismissed as a hobby had become the vehicle for reclaiming my self-worth. The money I had refused to surrender had created not just a sustainable fashion line, but a sustainable sense of self. And perhaps most importantly, standing firm had shown me that the worst-case scenario, family disapproval, even temporary estrangement, was survivable. Life continued, success was possible, and happiness could be found even without the validation I had spent decades chasing. The greatest lesson wasn't about money or even family dynamics. It was the simple, transformative understanding that honoring my own dreams wasn't selfish. It was essential. Setting boundaries wasn't a rejection of love, but an affirmation of self-respect. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is refuse to participate in patterns that diminish you both. In protecting my business fund, I had discovered something far more valuable: the knowledge that I was worthy of investment, not just financially, but emotionally, creatively, and spiritually. That was a return no family loan could ever match. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure when pursuing your dreams? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more stories like this one. And remember, protecting your dreams isn't selfish, it's self-respect. Thanks for watching, and may you always find the courage to invest in yourself when it matters most.